Joining us now from Yankee Stadium, the Yankees beat writer for NJ Advance Media. You can see his work on NJ.com and the Star Ledger. A friend of the show, Max Goodman. Max, thanks for coming back this week.
Thanks for having me, Joe. Good to be back.
Absolutely. All right, let's talk about Aaron Boone going with Rodon in Game 1. What do you think about the decision, and do you think it was really that close between Rodon and Schmidt?
I do think there was a bit of a debate to it, and what Boone was explaining to us today is that a lot of it came down to just keeping Rodon in rhythm. This allows him to pitch in his, normal slot in the rotation, and then Garrett Cole will be on normal rest in Game 2 as well. Something that I picked up on with Rodon is he was talking about how Garrett Cole handled his emotions in that clincher against the Royals. You saw some of those pictures of Rodon acting out in Game 2 back at Yankee Stadium. That was the lone loss for this team in that division series against Kansas City. I think he let his emotions get the best of him a little bit. He was too amped up early on, and his stuff was electric. But then it all unraveled for him in the 4th inning. So he was talking about how Cole didn't roar or emote really on the mound until the very end of that start when he got through 7 innings. And then he just unleashed this ace-like roar. So I think that Rodon's going to try to have a little bit of a better poker face. And he's faced Cleveland more than any other team in his career. So he's got some familiarity with this lineup, but he knows that they've been better this year than they have in recent years as well.
Yeah, you can let the Yankee fans take care of the roars for you if you're pitching well on the mound. All right, let's take a look at the rest of the rotation. As you mentioned, Cole will go in Game 2, and so Schmidt, he gets the Game 3 start. Luis Gil will start in Game 4. Let's stick with Rodon for a second. If this series does go 7 games, do you think there's any chance he's making 3 starts?
Ooh, I don't think so. I think that he'd go in Game 5, and then with the travel day back to New York, then it would be Cole and Schmidt, I guess, in a Game 6 and a Game 7. And I do think that this will come back to New York. Tentatively, I've got Yankees in 6 right now with a little bit of a day before prediction for you, Joe. But I think this Cleveland team does deserve some respect, and they played really well during the regular season. They're scrappy, they're pesky, and their bullpen is just unbelievable. So they're going to play these Yankees really tough. I do think they'll come back to New York, and the Yankees will need to clinch at home, and they'll be able to go back to Cole and then Schmidt for those games. Maybe have Gil on short rest if they want to mix things up. But I think Rodon will just go in Game 5, and then that should be it for him.
Speaking of responding to the moment, Giancarlo Stanton seems to do it every time. He was obviously the hitting star in the ALDS. What can he do for his legacy if he continues to hit in the postseason? I feel like we were just trying to run him out of town a season ago.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, this is doing wonders for him and his reputation in New York, to say the least. I think that fans get on him pretty hard during the regular season, especially when he's not out there for, weeks and months at a time. That's been basically an annual tradition for him when he gets hurt, usually a lower body, soft tissue type of injury. But give him a lot of credit, right? We were just in Kansas City at the end of last year. He was very accountable about how that 2023 season went for him specifically, as much as it was a disappointment for the team as a whole. And he made some changes this offseason to get leaner and lighter. And this wasn't necessarily making up for it during the regular season for him. And he did have that injury at some point during the summer. But for him to just go back out there and take care of business like he's been doing throughout his entire Yankees career in pinstripes in October, start to think about the Hall of Fame, right? I mean, if he can get to 500 home runs and he has this prodigious track record in the playoffs too, I think that can only help him.
Yeah, definitely. But we always talk about how Judge has impacted Soto this season, or Soto's impact on Judge. What have those two guys meant to Stanton this season?
Well, I think everyone can learn off of each other, right? Austin Wells has been hitting cleanup for a while, but Stanton's then going to be in the hole and watching those at-bats when Soto and Judge are out there. And typically they're working the count and they're getting on base a lot. So you're going to get to see exactly how a pitcher is going to attack. Let's use for Stanton's case, Judge is a similar hitter, a righty bat with a lot of power that can make you pay if you miss over the heart of the plate. So, obviously Stanton's going to be watching those ABs closely, seeing how pitchers attack Judge, and then using that information and all the technology they've got in the dugout to make those changes. And he's a DH, right? So he's got all the time in the world during the game to get ready for those ABs. But in this series, Joe, Cleveland's going to be using a lot of different relievers. You're probably only going to see a pitcher once, maybe twice if it's a starter, but certainly in the middle to late innings, you're only seeing these guys once. You got to be extra prepared for those ABs.
Yeah, that's why having those balanced lineups definitely helps this time of year. Max, Jose Ramirez along with Steven Kwan, we're talking about two of the better hitters here in the American League. We know this team gave the Yankees fits in a tough 5-game series 2 years ago. So what do you expect from the Guardians team this time around?
I think Ramirez is it's similar to Francisco Lindor, right? I mean, he's been getting so much attention with the Mets, but he had better years in Cleveland. Maybe just wasn't under the spotlight as much. So this will be a chance for Ramirez, if he can play well in this series, to gain even more national attention. And you said it, Kwan is going to put the ball in play. He's going to get on base. It stood out to me here at the workout at Yankee Stadium is that the Guardians were working on bunts extensively. You know, this is an offense that they're not going to necessarily beat you with the home run as much as they can, as we saw Lane Thomas hit that big grand slam against the Tigers to get the Guardians to this game in that clincher in the DS. So, you know, they have some big boppers in that lineup, but I think cohesively, it's just, they're not going to go away, right? They're going to scrap and claw and build rallies together with singles and getting the guy over. That fundamental baseball that sometimes can be a weakness for the Yankees.
Yeah, you mentioned they were working on bunts out there. We saw it from David Fry. Guy hit a home run in an elimination game. Later in the game, he's laying down the bunt for the suicide squeeze, and that made the difference for them in this. So you know they're ready to play small ball. But, you know, going into the season, it was all about the Orioles, Yankees, Rangers, and Astros. The Guardians really didn't get a lot of love. So do you think this team has a chip on their shoulder this time of year?
It's certainly possible. Yeah, you know, these two teams have a history. If you remember, going back to the division series 2 years ago when Josh Naylor did the baby cradle when he homered off of Garrett Cole, and then Gleyber Torres did it again when he made the force out at second base to end that series. Let's not forget that series went to 5. It could have gone either way in that last, you know, best of 5 clincher game. So I really do think that Cleveland's going to give the Yankees a run for their money, but Cleveland's not going to be a team that's going to roll over. They're definitely a formidable opponent. They won all those games in the regular season for a reason, right? Yep. They're the number 2 seed here, so you can't mess around with those guys.
Well, and another reason for their success, you talked about it earlier, has been the outstanding bullpen. Emmanuel Clase, one of the best closers, the best closer in the American League. The Guardians had the best bullpen ERA during the regular season, but the Yankees haven't given up a run out of their bullpen in the postseason. So which bullpen has the advantage in this series in your eyes?
I got to give it to Cleveland, honestly. You know, their track record during the regular season, they were tremendous. You know, a half a run better than any other team in the American League in terms of their bullpen as a whole. And once the game gets to Class A, more often than not, it's over if Cleveland has a lead. So that's a key for the Yankees to succeed in this series, is they cannot fall behind over the first, let's say, 5 innings, right? Because if you go into the 6th and the Guardians are entering their bullpen, and as Boone mentioned, they've got 4 or 5 leverage arms that they can use. It's not just Class A and everybody else. So you have to make sure you take advantage of opportunities early. And as good as the Yankees were in the bullpen, I think they may come back to reality just a little bit, right? It's hard to expect for them to have another 15 2/3 scoreless innings in relief. So I do think that Weaver can pitch just as well as Class A. He's proven that he's up to that challenge, and he can also be a multi-inning reliever for the Yankees. Clay Holmes was great in a setup role, same with Tommy Kahnle. But man, when the game gets to Class A, as much as he had the home run that he gave up in that Tigers series, I think the Yankees even got to him back in April, or maybe that was last year. Anthony Volpe had a big hit to have Class A blow a save. So it's happened before. It's just very rare, Joe. I mean, he had a .6 something ERA during the regular season. He is dominant.
It's not something you want to be counting on. All right, we can't have a Yankee show without talking about the captain. Aaron Judge was 2 for 13 against KC, no RBIs, but he did look a lot more patient in that last game, and he had a big double, came around to score eventually. Did you see anything he can carry over into this series from the way that one ended?
Well, sure. First hit of that series out of the infield, first extra base hit, and that was a missile to left center, that ball that he hit, and a couple of walks there as well. What stands out to me with Judge is that when you get into the post-game celebration there where they're spraying champagne, right as we started to walk into that clubhouse, everyone was crowded around Judge screaming, MVP, MVP. So the team has his back, as much as he didn't necessarily show up to his standards in that series. But I think a lot of things go into this, right? Wells has to hit better behind him and provide more protection. Jazz Chisholm Jr., same thing. You put those guys together, those numbers are not going to cut it. And the challenge here, too, and I'll tie this back into the bullpen, once the Guardians go to their pen, they're very aggressive and they use urgency with those arms. The fact that there's 4, 5, 6 of them that they can use, odds are Judge is only going to see, one of them at a time. He's not going to have as many chances to really dial in and get a chance to get used to those arms, if you know what I'm trying to say. So, he has that track record from the regular season, obviously coming off arguably the best single season by a right-handed hitter in MLB history. He's going to win the MVP this year. So he's got it in him, right? There's no doubt about that. But he certainly has to, maybe erase the narrative a little bit that he can't show up in October.
You might not get to see these pitchers more than one time in a game, but if this is a long series, you're going to have plenty of opportunities to see them over the course of 6 or 7 games. So we'll see how that plays out. So, Max, Volpe, a homegrown kid, born and bred in New Jersey. What kind of pressure do you think he's dealing with, given that he's under that home spotlight as well?
Right. I can't imagine. He's probably got so many friends and family in the seats, or at least watching from home in Jersey. Let's give him a little credit where credit's due. He hit the ball really well in that division series and didn't necessarily get as many results as he was hoping. A lot of line drive outs for him. And that happened a little bit with the rest of the roster, too, as Jazz Chisholm famously said that the Royals got lucky in that one win that they did have, which started the whole hoopla and the benches clearing. But I digress. I do think this is big for him, but also he's always risen to the challenge over the course of his baseball life getting to this point, right? I mean, he was drafted in the first round. He's always been a highly touted prospect. So this is a big test for him now, second career postseason series that he's going to be playing in. And as he said, that was the money quote that, the standard is to win the World Series, and that's what they're setting out to accomplish. So he's got to play a pivotal role in this series as well.
Yeah, it's got to be tough to focus on the game if you're also focusing on tickets and arrangements for family and friends who want to come to the ballpark. Look, it would be big if anybody got a huge hit in the postseason, that Aaron Boone type moment. But for this kid, because of where he's from, because he's come through the system, what do you think it would mean to have his signature Yankee playoff moment?
It would mean the world to him. And he's the kind of player that, when you talk to him post-game, all he cares about is winning. And even if he goes 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts, he'll still be pleased that the team played well. So obviously he's going to want to go out there and get that huge hit. I mentioned earlier he had that big moment off Class A in Cleveland. So, maybe he's able to have some magic against the Guardians bullpen. But I feel like there is some sort of October moment coming out of one of those role players, maybe not a Judge or a Soto, but someone's going to step up big in this series, and they're going to have to, because it's going to be a lot of close games. And as we've talked about a lot already, that Guardians bullpen is very reliable for them. So someone's got to step up if it's a close game or if you're trailing late, and maybe it ends up being Volpe. All
right, let's move across the diamond here to first base, because today Boone said Anthony Rizzo is getting more treatment, and he hasn't ruled him out yet. You think that's just gamesmanship here, or do you think we could actually see Rizzo in the CS?
It could be. I mean, he was out there taking ground balls, and he's been working out with the team over these last several days and weeks at this point since he got hurt. From my perspective, it would be crazy if he was able to come back from 2 fractured fingers within, 2 weeks since he got hit by that pitch in Game 161 against Pittsburgh. That would be wild and a testament to his tenacity to be able to come back. But a veteran like Rizzo, he's going to be honest with the team and honest with himself if he's not able to go and give it 100%. Oswaldo Cabrera and John Birdie played some quality defense at first under the circumstances, that's really not a position they have that much experience with. Certainly not for Birdie, who made his professional debut or MLB debut at first base in the postseason. So the Yankees have other options, and if Rizzo's going to go out there and be compromised, then he probably shouldn't make it back for the series. But as Boone said today, there's a chance.
8 more wins to get to that World Series crown. We're going to find out which team is going to be on their way after this. Max Goodman, New Jersey Advanced Media. Check his work out, NJ.com and the Star Ledger. Thanks so much for the time tonight. We'll see you around the stadium.
Sounds good, Joe. Thanks for having me.